Welcome to your Make It Stick challenge. Today I'm going to give you a little physiology lesson. So we're going to do something just a little bit different. I get a lot of questions lately about intensity and how hard I should be exercising. So at this point in your challenge, if you are, say, about 4 weeks into your challenge, you're in a habit, now you're thinking, okay, now I need to zoom in and narrow my focus a little bit more on intensity and how hard I'm working. How do I know how hard to work? So one of the measures of cardiovascular or aerobic exercise intensity is heart rate. And there's also how you feel. We call it rate of perceived exertion, RPE. It's just your personal rating, your gut feeling of your perception, so your feel of exertion. You can't get it wrong. It's just, this is how I feel. And the signs and the symptoms generally, as your numbers go higher on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the hardest, the closer you are to a 10, you're probably doing a lot of mostly out of your mouth breath while you're sleeping. Most of us anyway, if we're lucky, we can breathe through our nose. So at rest, it's all nose. It starts to be a little of both as we work harder. Then it's mostly mouth breathing. As far as talking, so if somebody's actually testing you, they're going to talk to you because they want to get some feedback on how well you're talking. So if I first start a test, I'm talking easily in full sentences, just like this. The harder I start to work, that's what happens to my speech. More space between the words because I'm trying to catch my breath between, and there's more of that. So while I was talking earlier, you saw me shoulders down, just same rib cage lung connection, and then as I try to get more oxygen, I'm going to open up. And that subtle gesture is also something that we look for as we're testing you to find out where's that fine line. They just crossed it right now and you don't even realize. We've noticed, but that's a big piece of your testing. So there's your talk test, your breathlessness test, and then it's hand gestures. So we start to get to you can't talk too much. It's really broken up and you're just kind of getting really concerned about how much longer am I going to go? And what I notice when I'm testing people is every once in a while at the beginning of the test, I'll have to ask them, okay, stop telling your story for a minute. How are you doing? Tell me what's your number. As we get progressively later and later into the test, we cross the line and pretty soon the person will tell me, I'm at an 8 now. I'm at a 9 now. So we know things are getting a little bit more interesting. So that's an idea of how you'll rate it, okay? 10 is really uncomfortable. Most people don't like to go to 10. In fact, when I describe it in a testing situation, I'll say 1 is sitting on the couch channel surfing and 10 is vomiting. We try never to get there, okay? And I am kidding. But if we were to compare target heart rate, that's an instance where generally we're going to have you with a chest monitor on and the ability to read that heart rate monitor on a watch or pick it up right on a piece of cardio equipment. You can sometimes trust the monitors on an elliptical or treadmill or bike, any type of equipment that you might be using. They're a little bit less predictable than if you have a chest strap on picking you up. So, but monitoring your heart rate is another way to do it. Now, a lot of athletes will do that. But in a fitness situation, here's one reason why I will recommend to you or suggest to you. It's your decision to make. Perceived exertion or your rating of your own, how hard am I working, never lies. That is never wrong. Your heart rate may resist or it may fly up and you may still feel fine for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes the heart rate will be higher on a given day because you may be slightly dehydrated. And so if you don't have enough water in you, that also dehydrates and thickens the blood, so it's not circulating as well. If you've dehydrated and sweated some of it out, it makes you have to work harder, so the heart has to pump more and get it going faster. That's harder work, so your perception of exertion will be higher and probably heart rate will be both higher, but one may be more than the other. if you have a lot of fatigue or you're coming down with something, yet you don't know it. So you've got, just on the verge of something and not quite feeling right, but you really haven't got a full-blown cold or flu or illness yet. Sometimes that will show up in heart rate before it shows up anywhere else. If you've had some stress, just you rush to get to the appointment, or you have had a lot of stress during that day and it's still with you, it doesn't leave just because you start doing something else, or if you've been sleep deprived, sometimes that also will affect it. Okay, so a lot of different reasons. If you've had too much caffeine was the other one. Those things will affect your heart rate, and they may or may not affect your perception of exertion. You may actually feel pretty good because you've got a little caffeine in you, and limited amount of caffeine for some people is okay, but it will affect your heart rate, although it doesn't affect your RPE. So consider those changes. And here's the simplicity of RPE. On a scale from 1 to 10, if we were informally doing that, that's what I'd recommend for you. There's a true 6 through 20 scale called the Borg scale, designed by Victor Borg to associate eventually with heart rates. But 6 through 20 is a little bit harder just to very easily assess. Most of us are pretty comfortable with on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 is nothing, 10 is all out and exhausted, 5 is maybe just walking the dog or pushing the grocery cart through the grocery store really fast. If you were working hard, starting to work hard and knew it, you'd be at a 6 or 7. If you were working and breathing harder, but still in control of things, probably an 8, touching on a 9, okay? So that's much easier to grasp. You've got to do some math if you want to figure out your target heart rate. And this will be, by the way, in an email if you're on the 66-day challenge list. And if you want to be, write me a note in the comments and I'll get back to you. If you're going to do some target heart rate figuring, here's what you need to do to really make it specific to you. You're going to take the formula 220 minus your age. With that number, you're going to subtract your resting heart rate. And the best time to do that is first thing in the morning. So if you're in the middle of the day watching this right now and you've had any caffeine at all, and or you're sitting up and you've been moving throughout your day, it's not a resting heart rate. So it's going to skew things just a little bit. Take it first thing in the morning, 3 mornings in a row before caffeine, okay, if you do caffeine, and then see what your average is. That's your resting heart rate. So you would use that number. 220 minus age equals, minus your resting heart rate equals, take that number times 0.50 or 50% and get an answer, and take that number also times 0.85 or 85%, get an answer to that. Now you're not done yet, so with each of these 2 numbers you have now, you're going to add your resting heart rate back to the top one and to the bottom one, and you have a range now that is your working at 50 to 85% of your heart rate reserve, or where ideally we'd like you to be. And that's a fairly big range. If you're really fit, you probably want to drop the bottom numbers, the low ones, off. If you're deconditioned, you want to leave the top ones out and shoot for just the bottom right now. But you want to make it into that range and probably not go above that if you're focusing on fitness and endurance, okay? So much more math, much more accounting to do on this side, and you have to monitor it to make sure you're in there to really making that exercise count. The guilty part of us is, for females, we tend to work too low, lighter intensity, and go for a longer period of time is tradition, and males tend to work in the upper level for maybe too short a time. So a little compromise is good, and a little switching it up from day to day. Don't do the same intensity every day. Mix it up. Spend some time higher, spend some time lower, spend some time doing high and low throughout your week. That will be an optimal workout.